my career, a supervisor told me something I will never forget. She said, write every note as if it could be read aloud in court. And she wasn't trying to scare me. She was trying to make me intentional. And that advice made me slow down, do a gut check, and regularly ask myself, if this were ever to be scrutinized, would I be able to stand by every word? And I think most social workers have some version of that philosophy. Over time, each of us develops our own approach to documentation, whether that means writing with a legally protective mindset, using a more therapeutic tone, prioritizing continuity of care, or meeting billing requirements, or leaving a clear trail for the next worker who picks up the case. For years, all those different approaches worked. They reflected our individuality, our clinical judgment, and the needs of our specific roles. But now, AI has entered the chat, and suddenly the notes we write aren't just ours anymore. They're becoming training material. They're turning into patterns that algorithms learn from, and the inconsistencies that used to live quietly inside our agencies now have the potential to scale. So the real question is not, should AI rewrite our notes? Instead, it's this: what do we as a profession believe documentation is supposed to represent? Because if we don't have clarity on that, what exactly are we asking AI to imitate? AI can absolutely support us. It can speed things up, assist us with organization, and help give us back our most precious resource, time. But it cannot feel attunement, and it can't understand the weight behind silence, or the meaning of a subtle shift in body language, or that beautiful moment when you feel a therapeutic door open that had been closed for months. It doesn't know when something is too personal for a note, or too essential to leave out. And if we're not intentional, AI may flatten the very things that make documentation ethical, protective, and human. And this is exactly the same pause point I keep returning to in my own reflective work. Not to slow down productivity, but to slow down authority, impact, and consequence before the note becomes data, before the data becomes a pattern, and before the pattern becomes a system. So here's the compass I always return to. It's the same 3 questions I've shared before, now applied to documentation in an AI-augmented world. Number 1, does this note protect the client in a crisis or high-stakes moment? Because documentation is often written for moments we hope never come, but we need it at that time, and we need it to be accurate. Number 2, does this note preserve the client's voice or replace it with something cleaner, faster, or more convenient? Because dignity lives in the details we choose to retain. And number 3, does this note clearly reflect your clinical reasoning? Not a polished summary or a default template, you. If AI is going to be a part of our workflow, and it is, these aren't optional reflections anymore. They're necessary guardrails. The truth is, our profession has never had a unified approach to documentation. We've relied on intuition, agency, culture, individual judgment, and personal philosophy, and that worked just fine until the moment algorithms entered the process. Because once a machine starts learning from us, our inconsistencies become patterns, and our patterns become norms, and the norms become systems, and that's the real risk. Not that AI exists, but that it learns before we decide who we are together. This is actually why I've been so careful with how tools like Illuma Scribe are being designed. Not as shortcuts for thinking, but as supports for thinking. Because documentation should never be something a machine does for us. It's something we remain accountable to. So maybe the ethical question isn't, is AI safe for documentation? Maybe it's this: what values do we want our documentation to carry? And how do we protect those values as technology evolves? If we can answer that, we can use AI with clarity instead of fear. So remember, no easy answers, just better questions. And I'll see you on the next one.